Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Turn
Just admitting everybody in that was in the waiting room, and then we're going to get started. So, if everybody could make sure, please, that you're on mute, that would be a huge help for us. And Mark, we've got a ton of people on the call. Hi, Debbie, I see you. All right. Well, we're going to get started. It's 9:30, and I'll just keep admitting everybody as they
What?
come into the waiting room. But again, if you could make sure you're on mute, that would be a huge help. So I'm so excited. By the way, everybody, I'm Michelle. I'm the training director for the company, and I am just so excited that I get to have this time with our president, Mark Hall, on another Broker Up call. So, and it's really kind of cool because I'm sure you've all seen his videos every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock prompt. And now we get 90 minutes. So here's what we're going to do. Mark's going to start us off just with some words to get us going, and then this is your chance.
No, here.
I'm going to make sure everybody's on mute real quick, Mark. But I'm
Okay.
gonna have to you're going to have to unmute yourself, okay?
Okay.
All right. So I'm muting everybody, admitting more people in. Okay, so Mark is going to give us some words to get us started, and then after that, this time is for you to ask questions. So, and then I'll field those questions. So, what you want to do is you want to put your questions into the chat, and as I will take those questions and field them to him, and we will get to as many as we possibly can in the 90 minutes that we've got. So, Mark, I may have to up my subscription on Zoom because we're up to 70 people in the room. This is exciting. I'm so glad you guys are all here. So, Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you. Also, for anybody else that's maybe having trouble with Zoom at any point, this is being streamed live on Facebook as well. So, Mark, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. And first and foremost, I want to thank Michelle for inviting me to do this because it was her idea to get me out here again for Broker Up for an hour and a half. If you're not nervous about how many people are on this, I am. She asked if she wanted to make me a co-host, if I wanted to be a co-host, and I said no, because there's the potential that I might get nervous and just turn myself off. So we nixed that idea really quick because she didn't want me to just disappear. So I'm excited to have this opportunity to talk to you. I do want to caution everybody that some of you may go away frustrated because your question will not be answered, will not be talked about on here. And the only reason that would be is because of time constraints. I'm going to be as sensitive as I can in answering your questions, but I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to answer your question to the best of my ability. I will give out this, which is that some of you may not be happy about my answers because I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just speaking from experience and from being the president of the company, and it doesn't mean you have to agree with me. I appreciate everybody's opinion, as I hope you appreciate mine as well. And one thing I want to tell you that I saw this week, which is why I've got my laptop, because normally I don't have notes, but my notes are also they cross between my phone and my laptop. And unfortunately, because I'm using my phone, I can't use it from there. But one thing about being ready is you want to stay ready so that you don't have to get ready. And I think that's a pretty bold statement. You want to stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And the purpose of that is that too many of us in the industry don't get ready until something happens. And at that point, we're busy trying to get ready, even though we already needed to be ready. So stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And then also, you need to have proactive conversations with the people you work with. And some of you may have a question about that at some point today, but the bottom line is you want to talk to them before they bring it up to you, because by the time they bring it up to you, they've already gotten an opinion or some other information from some other source, which is why they're now broaching it with you. So you need to be as thorough as possible when you're covering information with them: buyers, sellers, prospects, customers, clients, co-ops, brokers, all those people. You want to be as proactive as possible so that you don't get caught off guard. Again, stay ready, and then that way you don't have to get ready.
I love that, Mark. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. That's exciting.
Let's hope so.
Well, let me ask you this, and then this will get us started. And like I said, guys, this is your chance. You've got the president of the company, and when we talk about Mark, the brokers call him the broker's broker. So this is your chance to ask your questions. So please put them in the chat, and we will do everything we can to get those answered. I also want to say, for those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, same thing. I've got the comments pulled up, and I will try to field those as well. If you don't want everybody in the chat to see your question, totally get it. You can direct message that to me.
Baby, what's up?
And I will make sure that the question gets answered, but I won't rat your name. How about that? Again, I want to make sure everybody's on mute, so if you could make sure you're muted, that would be great. And let's see, we've got a question here for starters, Mark. If time allows, is there a special stipulation for retainer fee that can be used for a buyer agreement? Any thoughts on using that?
That one's totally off guard. I don't know. That's an individual situation. We might can develop something like that. Or what you may not know is that the brokers actually have a list of special stipulations, et cetera, that they keep that goes across the whole company. So we could look towards developing some of that, something like that.
Perfect. Perfect. And I think I can, I'm going to speak to your shirt right now, Mark, and just say broker up. Right? Broker up. Okay, so Natasha, one of our managing brokers in the Woodstock office, asked a great question, and that's what worries Mark in this market?
Well, certainly the lack of inventory worries Mark in this market. This is where it starts getting difficult because all the questions pop up. So I see them and then I get distracted because truthfully, I'm like this. Oh my gosh. Answer that one. Hey, yeah. What worries me in this market is the lack of inventory, but the bigger picture is even more worrisome to me. And I'm not talking for everybody, but I'm talking about me. And that is investor purchases of property. And the reason that that's concerning to me is because many of you may remember as little as 5 years ago that when you got off at any intersection from a major freeway or off of 285, or depending on whether you were in Cobb or Cherokee or Fulton or where you might be, you might have looked over in the median there at the exit ramp, and there would have been all these signs: I buy houses cheap, any condition, any price. And those were just regular old people who were buying property to fix up and then flip and turn for a profit. And they didn't necessarily not like real estate agents. They just were looking to buy distressed properties. And if you go to an intersection now, you don't see any of those signs. Why? Because the institutional investors wiped out all those people. So that's a whole segment of the population that were involved with real estate who are no longer involved with real estate. And the flip side of that is,
oh, everybody make sure you're muted.
And the flip side of that is that now institutional investors are looking to cut us out completely. And the reason that's important is I think it's time to have conversations with sellers about who's buying the property, because at some point we could get squeezed out. Just something to think about. The more valuable we make ourselves, the more likely we're not going to be squeezed out. But unfortunately, there are forces out there. I've mentioned this a long time ago because it happened probably during the downturn, but some states wanted to unlicense real estate professionals because they viewed it that there was a push by certain consumer groups to say that why is it any different than selling a vehicle? And you can do that. You don't have to be a car salesman to sell a vehicle. Why do you have to be licensed to sell houses or to help people sell houses? Those forces don't seem to be in the marketplace anymore. But because of what's going on, we are kind of faced with a situation where we need to make sure that we are showing our value to everybody all the time. And one of the things that we can do, I'm the executive of an estate for a listing for a house in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am, based on what the deceased wanted, not selling it to an investor. Not. It's going to be an owner occupant. That's it. So it can be done. And that's one of the things that worries me about the market.
Well, and I know we've been talking a lot about, just to your whole point, Mark, we're developing some class material just so you guys know on how you create your value proposition. Because I do agree with you. I had a situation, and everybody, put your comments or, questions in the chat here. But I had a situation where somebody called me up and wanted me to list their house, but they refused to pay a buyer. And they just said, I don't need to. And honestly, why do I need to pay you a full commission when you're going to sell the house tomorrow? And I just had to say, we're not a good fit for each other, because I'm not going to do that. First, I'm not going to devalue another agent in this industry that I might have to work with again. But also, I'm not going to, devalue myself, I guess, either. So
We watched a similar thing happen in insurance and also in the travel industry, et cetera, where the individual insurance agent or travel agent disappeared for a while, and now they're back on a resurgence. Why? Because you can't get customer service from people unless you have a direct contact. Well, this is not any different than what any of us in the industry are experiencing with the properties that are owned by institutions. I hear it every day. I can't get them to call me back. I can't get information about the property. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it's a real problem. And the technologists of the world want to take the humans out of the equation, but I got news for them. Without the humans, there is no equation. So if they're not humans buying the property ultimately as the end user, you can own all the institutional houses you want to. You can rent them to whoever you want to. But at some point, people need to be involved. And that's what we do, is work with people.
Agree. All right, guys, ask your questions or okay, let's see. Somebody just asked, are we seeing the request for discounted fees in today's market?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's happening to our Atlanta Communities listing realtors and associate brokers as well, where they're being asked to work for less, to share less, etc. And it really creates a conundrum, because as many of you know, if you go on Atlanta Communities Rocks, one of the things you see is people talking about other people offering less to buyer brokers. And that's one of the issues where at some point you're going to have to figure out a way to either work for what's offered, or you're going to have to figure out a way to get paid more. And unfortunately, that's the nature of the market we're in. It's not so much that people want to cut you out of it. It's because the sellers are squeezing the listing agents, who then in turn are squeezing the buyer's agents, because in their mind, they don't have any choice. And it's the reality of where we are. We have been very, very fortunate, for those of you who don't know, it's been very fortunate for those people that we know for a long time here in Atlanta and in the Atlanta market, because of the fact that we have been immune to decreases in commission. Across the country, commission had already slid to 5% in many places, and then further to 4.5%.
It's crazy. Mark, I have a question for you on
Sure.
this. Have you, because I know you've been in the business a minute, right? A minute. Have you ever seen a market quite like this?
No, not at all. We had the market where we were begging for buyers and begging for people to come look at houses and begging for people to buy the houses. And now it's just kind of like the perfect storm. And then you couple that with what's going on internationally with the Ukraine and the Russian invasion and gas prices and inflation, et cetera. It's complicated. And I think it affects, fortunately, in many parts of Metro Atlanta, we're immune to that, but psychologically it has its impact on people's mindsets. And people become hesitant to make moves because they don't know what tomorrow brings. And it's permeating the market, or starting to.
Well, yeah, and like you said, I think it is a perfect storm. And one of the things I think that this is just my opinion, and I'm putting it out there, but I think there's also, to some degree, a change in people's attitudes as far as just a me first kind of world, and it feels sometimes harder to work together with certain parts of the population.
Well, it is.
So,
It is, and I think we have to guard against this. We have an opportunity, just like I am in front of all of you today. We have an opportunity to spread the message. But to do that, you have to have the confidence to talk about it. Notice I've never said that I'm right or I know it all or any of these things, but I do have the confidence to talk about it. And I also have the confidence to say, oh, wow, that's a great point. I'm not right. And I think the conversations are what's lacking, because too many, this happens every day in real estate. That you get the call, you go, you see the property, you determine a price, you put the sign in the property, and that's about it. Not that there's not all kinds of, don't say, Mark, doesn't think we do anything. I never said that. I'm hitting that head on. But really, there's not a conversation. We don't go and sit around in the family room or around the coffee table. We don't go to their kitchen and sit at their table. We do everything remotely. And I think that leads to misunderstandings and also to not a clear picture about what's going on.
I agree. And to your whole point, the one thing I think you've said this, I think, in even one of your videos, just about picking up the phone, because some things can come across so wrong on a text that they didn't really mean to communicate. So
right.
You're right. Okay, so
well, when you are, think about how isolated everybody thought they were during the pandemic and were longing for human contact. And then here we are, in some respects, out of the pandemic. And yet we still many of us haven't returned to the kitchen table or to the coffee table. And it's time to do that. It's time to do what other real estate professionals are not doing. Mm-hmm. Don't be like everybody else. Be better.
And that's why we're at Atlanta Communities too.
I hope so. Now
we're getting some chats. Mark, they're waking up. Okay, so Iva, when I asked you the question about have you ever seen a market like this, Iva Butler said 27 years for me, and this is a first. Joanna said, I believe we are in the crash, the inventory crash, not the equity crash. Yes. Okay, now here's a question. Does Mark have a go-to question that doesn't violate fair housing to ask buyers agents if the offer will be owner occupied? Yes, you can tell by the financing. However, when cash, it can be a little harder to tell sometimes. I've seen where the buyer's agents share it will be owner occupied. However, it wasn't. Just curious on recommendations.
Well, I think we have to look to institutional sellers. And in this case, I'm going to say Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and also HUD, where they advertise it specifically to owner occupants for a certain period of time before they let anybody else buy the property. And I think that if they can do it, if those entities that are quasi-government or government can do that, so can we, because an investor is not a protected class. But you got to have permission from the seller, which means you got to have a conversation with it, because I can tell you that if you waive $5 $500, $5,000 more at a seller, they don't give a damn who is buying the property.
Mhm.
And the only way to make a difference when it comes to that, especially with cash buyers, is to have that conversation before it happens. Because otherwise they want more and more and more.
Right.
And that's human nature. We all do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was a good question. Here's another one for you because, like I said, they're waking up now. Is there anything we as a company can do to persuade builders to build smaller, more affordable homes for first time buyers? Oh, good Lord. I feel sorry for our first time buyers right now.
Well, as a company, no, but are there initiatives metro-wide that are seeking to solve the affordable housing issue? The answer is yes. There was a very compelling, it was a Women's Council of Realtors that Norm Kennedy hosted. It was in Smyrna. This was back last year in May. And one of the speakers there talked about zoning laws and the fact that zoning laws, in many cases, prohibit tighter home ownership, tighter development because of how it's zoned. So that's going to be something that cities are going to have to look at, and municipalities and counties are going to have to look at in order to make it so that you can have more affordable housing. It's a problem, and I don't know what the solution is.
It is a problem, and I agree with you. But that's interesting to know. You're right. Okay, here's our next one. Like I said, they're waking up. Can you speak to the long-term effect of investors buying up homes in our market and what that will do for affordability, home values, and the rental market?
Wow, I think you covered it all. It affects all of those things. And the reason for that is if they buy up all the inventory, then they're in control of the inventory. There are segments of Metro Atlanta right now where institutional investors bought all the single family homes available at any one time. In other words, they wiped out every house that a first time homeowner, a vet, a FHA buyer, a conventional buyer, even cash buyers could have bought and moved into. They wiped it out. And why? Because they're either going to rent it out or they're going to hold it until they increase the value because they bought all the inventory. So it affects affordability. Think about being a tenant in a property. You've lived there for 4 years. You've paid your rent on time or ahead of time. All 4 years, you've never had an issue. You take great care of the property. Your lease is coming due. And now the owner of the property says, hey, great, you've been a wonderful tenant. I really appreciate you. Thanks for being here. And by the way, I'm going to double your rent.
Whew.
Think it's not happening? There are a lot of tenants going to be displaced. And where are they going to go? How are they going to buy? There's no inventory for them to buy. Now we've got more people displaced. Mm-hmm. I joke all the time, and hopefully it is a joke, that I hope the government lets me live in a house at least as nice as the one I have now when they take over everything. And I don't mean the government per se, but I'm talking about institutional investors. If every house is sold to them, then guess what? We'll all be tenants.
Mm-hmm. It's a little scary to think about, isn't it?
For me, it is, but maybe we all want to be tenants. I don't know. I never said I'm right. I just have opinions. You
never said you were right, but you're right. Okay, so let me get through some of our comments here. Okay, we did that one. So Patty said, "Thanks, Patty. I do sit at the table with them. That's awesome." Iva said, "Person to person. Once I have the conversation with the seller, they want a family to buy. That's awesome." Any advice for having no escalation clause in private remarks? So I guess on the FMLS, what's your advice about having no escalation clause?
I'm going to answer that in the macro, in the bigger picture, which is you have to discuss all that with the seller. And if the seller is interested in no escalation clause, notice I said the seller, I didn't say you because it's inconvenient for you and then you have to juggle more. If the seller doesn't want escalation clauses, then put it in the private remarks. But I will caution you about this. I don't believe that you should limit the seller's ability to see offers. In other words, I know some of you have posted on Atlanta Communities Rocks. Here's the sheet I got back from the listing agent, and they wanted to do this. Wow, what a great idea. And I'm thinking, no, it's not a great idea, because if the Mr. and Mrs. Seller, why would you potentially scare away a perfectly good offer because you predetermined what the offer should look like? I'm not in favor of that. I realize that many of the listing agents are, because it may limit the pool of potential offers that they have to field, etc. But come on, offer, and let the seller counter for what the seller wants. Because once they commit on paper and once they offer, they may be committed to that property. And then you can morph them into, by countering, into, well, we're not going to counter price. We're not going to counter these terms. Well, we are going to counter this, and eliminate your escalation clause.
Makes sense. Just present them all, right?
Present them all. Get them all.
Present them all. And
Right.
it is a lot of work, and it's stressful sometimes having to do all that. But, you're right. Present them all. Okay, Joanna, you're right. I think it might have been Klaus Schwab that said that, but you will own nothing and be happy.
Well, if which for most Americans it has been historically, if the one way to accumulate wealth is through home ownership and the building of equity, if that's eliminated, guess where the wealth went? I don't know.
Somewhere else, not for
I don't
us.
know. Right. Not for us.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got another question here. When you talk about institutional investors, what companies are you talking about besides Zillow and Open Door?
Any of them. I mean, I don't know. Any of the hedge funds, any of the big boys. You'll hear the name BlackRock. I'm not specifically talking about them, but I'm talking about any of these nameless, faceless entities that are buying property. And do I know all their names? No, I don't.
But there's a bunch of them out there.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah. Okay, so Tracy asked, I'm having trouble advising for offers while the home is listed at 250. Presently, that would be its value. You research the pending properties, and in 30 days, it could be worth another 10,000. Clients want to offer 15 to 20 over because they are exhausted. How in the world do I live with myself being comfortable with over asking, escalation clauses, appraisal gaps, etc.?
That's a great question. I'll counter that by giving you a story. So literally right before the crash of 2008, I sold one of the last homes that I ever sold. And hopefully that person is not on the call, and neither is anybody that was on the other side of the transaction. And I sold that property at list price, and literally in about a week, it was worth far less than that price. And I had to live with that up until the market returned years later. And fortunately, that homeowner didn't hold me accountable because I couldn't have predicted it, etc. But it was something that I had to internalize for a long time until the market caught back up with the value of that property. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to see some of that. The only way property values go up is by selling properties at more expensive than the properties that previously sold for. But it's a tough call. And you can't promise them instant equity. You can't say, well, if you buy it today at 275, even though it's listed at 250, tomorrow it'll be worth 300. Maybe not. I don't really have a great answer for that, other than you have to talk about what the risk and the rewards are with the individual. And as the interest rates climb, etc., you got to factor that part of it in as well. And you have to think about the tax benefits. And there's many reasons for home ownership other than financial stability, schools, any number of things.
Right. But you're right. I think the way I try to describe it to, with my buyers right now is you've just got to go in eyes wide open and know what you're getting into and understand that you're probably going to be bringing cash to the table for a house that's not worth what you're actually paying for it. But I agree with Tracy. They're exhausted. The buyers are exhausted and emotional. It's a hard market right now. But that's the big thing. Eyes wide open, right? Have the conversation
Absolutely.
at the kitchen table.
Right.
Okay. I just saw that Tampa is having a huge issue with this. I think it's the number one place in terms of vacancies because of the corporate buyers outbidding others than holding. Interesting.
Say
That's
that again. Can you read that again? Sorry.
Donna said, I think it's Donna. I just saw that Tampa is having, we're going back to those institutional investors, but she said, I just saw that Tampa is having a huge issue with this. I think it's the number one place in terms of vacancies because of the corporate buyers outbidding others and then holding the properties. That's interesting.
So last night I was watching the Hawks game. I think it was the Hawks game, and it was an ESPN commercial. It was on ESPN. That doesn't mean it was a local commercial, but it was about the Georgia Rental Assistance Program, and the reason it was talking about people who were having difficulty paying their rent. And then we talk about this side of it, and you wonder, well, in many cases, no wonder, because they jack up their rents and do all kinds of things. And for those of you who are property management people or own property, I'm not talking about you, so don't get mad and start throwing darts at me through the phone, et cetera, because I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about in the bigger picture.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that moral angle. Thanks, Tracy. Or Tracy, I think that came from somebody else, but I'm sorry about that. Is there a kind way to call for highest and best? Do you recommend to call for highest and best when you start the listing or wait until the first offer comes in? I struggle with this as a listing agent and always try to be kind. Oh, Mark, I know how you feel about highest and best.
I abhor highest and best, because what it does is potentially, well, first off, it treats all offers as if they're the same. And I've forgotten how many blanks I looked at one time and even called it out, how many blanks there are to be filled in on a GAR purchase and sale agreement. They're not all the same. Highest and best only deals with who's going to pay potentially the most. And I don't like highest and best. That's equating that every offer is exactly the same. There's homogenous offers, and I don't believe that. So I think it's better to look at every offer individually and make decisions on each offer individually. And you encourage people to offer their best right off the bat. And then Mr. and Mrs. Seller looks at the offers in total and determines which one that they want to counter, and then they counter it. And if then that person doesn't accept that counter, then they go to the next person. Highest and best is FOMO, fear of missing out. I got to use a big, cool word, FOMO, fear of missing out. So they'll do damn near anything until what they did isn't what they wanted to do to win.
I pretty much knew that was going to be your answer.
Yeah.
I may
Sorry.
I may or may not have sat in your class about highest and best.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. There are other brokerages that are presenting cash offers in the form of guarantees to list their properties. What's your opinion on that?
I think that you have that ability too if you partner with some of the people that are in the marketplace that are making guaranteed offers. I think that you have that ability too if you partner with some of the people that are in the marketplace that are making guaranteed offers.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. It was weird.
I'm trying to do Facebook Live, and I'm listening to you twice, and I'm like, wait, why did he just say the same thing twice?
You think it was weird for you? You should have been me. I was like, wow, there's my own voice coming back at me, and my mouth's not moving.
Okay.
Talk to the ventriloquist and tell him, look, your hand's uncomfortable to begin with, much less now I'm talking without moving my lips.
You guys think we would have this, or at least I would have this Zoom thing down by then now, but the Facebook Live throws an extra curveball. But I do want to tell you, Kay on Facebook said, Michelle and Mark, this conversation and Zoom questions are invaluable and make us all better agents. Thank you for this time to pick Mark's brain. We need more of this as the market continues to challenge us. So I guess that means you're doing a good job, Mark.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I struggle with, at the end of the day, it's just me. And I consider myself well read, and I consider myself up on what's going on. I don't dwell on it because I don't succumb to negativity, and I don't let negativity influence me because I only have so much room in my brain. And probably every year it gets a little less roomier. And at that point, I don't have any room for negativity. We're going to have to keep. When I first bought my first house, interest rates were at 20% or 21%, and people were still buying and selling houses. I believe in the resiliency of the housing market, and coupled with that, the ups and downs of the housing market. I also believe people are extremely important. I don't know about all of you, but I consider myself a professional, and I plan on being here. I am not going to give in to all those people that want us gone. Not going to happen.
I love it. I love it. And I like what you said, and just no room for negativity. So that's good. You just got to keep pushing on and keep your smile on your face, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, all right. So Tracy said, I do have those conversations. I guess that's how I'm dealing with it. Thank you. And I'm trying to remember what she asked, but I know we answered her question. Oh, yeah. That was about offering 10 to 15,000, plus over asking. Okay, so we got that one done. Okay, so property goes active on MLS, one picture, no showings allowed. 1 week later, no sign and house is pending. And listing agent is also the selling agent. This feels unethical. However, is it? And can anything be done about this? I'm not going to say that part.
Okay. The overall answer is you have to follow First Multiple Listing Services rules and Georgia Multiple Listing Service rules. And when you take a listing, you have X amount of hours to put the property in the system. You should market it to everyone. So if you're asking the question to see whether we can do that, don't do it. I will report you myself. And for those of you who say I report stuff all the time, you know what? I would love to, and I don't. So don't be starting to put stuff on my shoulders and weighing me down. But I would love to convince the brokers of all the companies to try to clean all that stuff up, because it is bad. And is it illegal, immoral, violation of ethics and all that? I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's terrible.
So
That part I do know.
Can I say on that one, the question went to everyone. So Lisette, I'm going to say you need to go talk to Sandy about that one. Broker up.
And report it.
Thank you.
And report it.
Yeah. Definitely broker up on that. Okay, what about at least having an offer deadline? I struggle to put that up front since I think that can potentially limit the pool of offers because buyers are so fatigued.
I'm not in favor of an offer deadline. Again, it goes back to what I said about limiting offers. If you're representing a seller, you want any and all offers at any time.
Well, I think though, let me play devil's advocate on that one and let you come back with this. So what I struggle with is you get 10 offers on a property and like I did an open house a couple weeks ago, and at the end of the open house I had 10 plus offers. At some point the sellers have to review, like you said, and accept an offer. It doesn't mean that more offers can't come in, but the buyer's agents are asking us in the field, when's your seller going to start reviewing offers? So is it okay to just say we plan to meet Monday and look at what we've got?
Well, I mean, I think it's okay to say that if that is true and if the seller has authorized the disclosure of that information and if the seller's on board with that, of course. I
Okay.
mean, we work for the seller and we have to follow the seller's instructions. I'm going to give you an example and all of you can go, wow, I'm glad I don't represent him. But I think it's an apt example. So, through a death of a friend of ours, I'm the executive of an estate in Tennessee, and we haven't put the house on the market, but we're getting ready to. And the real estate professional who is listing the property there for me is also a friend of the deceased as well. The deceased said, I want to sell it to an owner occupant. I want people to live here. I don't want to sell it to an investor. So that's my marching orders, and I will follow those to a T. The second thing is that I've told the listing agent, which they know already, is that every offer that crosses, once we do it, and I have to be emotionally and mentally ready to start handling offers when the property goes live. They're going out of town next week. We're not going to do it until after they get back. I need their help and their involvement with listing the property and with fielding the offers. But when the offers start coming in, I'm going to make the agent's head spin around on her shoulders because I'm going to make a decision on each and every offer as it comes in. And the minute I get the offer that I'm looking for, I'm going to put it under contract to the exclusion of everybody else. Now, would sellers do that? Would you do that as a listing agent? Probably not. Would you advise a seller to go with the first offers, et cetera? Probably not. Not in Metro Atlanta, although this is in a metropolitan area too, and probably I could bid it on up and up and up. But you know what? I'm going to get what we want to get, which is the list price. Could I hold out and get more? Sure. Maybe. Maybe not.
You never know.
All they have to do is Russia has to lob one nuke towards the Ukraine, and you're going to see everything go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You got 7 offers and you were expecting 25, and now you got none because everybody withdrew.
It's a very good point.
Yeah.
Work with what you've got, right?
Right.
Okay, so Iva said Mark's madness is marvelous.
And then now I'll be on one of those shows on 5:00 p.m. where, yeah.
Maybe you need a T-shirt that says Mark's madness.
Yeah, could be.
Okay, so we got a question on Facebook Live. If we receive an offer while a listing is coming soon, how should we respond? Can a listing go from coming soon to pending?
All right, so based on FMLS rules, the answer is no. But if the offer is submitted to the seller, which all offers need to be submitted to the seller as soon as possible, no holding offers, and the seller sees one they like in pending, coming soon status, then it goes pending, and you flip it over to pending. It's just that simple. Seller's in control.
The seller is in control.
And you don't want me to talk about coming soon.
Actually, I kind of do now.
Okay, well, I don't like coming soon. The property is either available or it's not available. You don't have to pre-market it right now. Coming soon is a phenomena during the crash, and for years after that, that was started pretty much in Metro Atlanta by another company that I won't name that only uses 2 initials. Did I name it? Kind of. But anyway, coming soon was a phenomena that had never existed until then, and now persist because of why? I don't know. We tried to legitimize it so that we could better control it, and I don't know that it's worked.
Gotcha. And I will mention too, just a shameless plug here, that there are features if you are using KV Core to market a property, you can't use the coming soon feature there either. So they don't show up in the feed. So there's another reason not to use it. You're welcome, Mark.
Thank you. And for all you coming soon people, I didn't say I'm right. I'm just taking a stance. You asked the question and I responded.
You gave your opinion.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about the sellers who would sell but are afraid to sell because they don't have a place to go. What if we cross marketed those sellers in our company? If they knew they had a place to go, we'd have more inventory. That's interesting.
It is an interesting concept, and I don't know what the logistics of that is. Was somebody from our East Cobb office asked about that because some company is promoting that. I don't know. I don't know whether or not it would work, but I think it's certainly back to conversations, worth the conversation to talk to a seller about where they're going to go and how they're going to go, because the minute you put the property on the market, it's going to go under contract. And for those that are afraid to do that, maybe they want to go for an RV tour and be gone for 45 days. Maybe they have a lake house. Maybe they've always wanted to live in Savannah and they get an Airbnb. I mean, there are all kinds of alternatives.
Mhm,
The problem is about convenience.
mhm,
And one of the things that we need to be attuned to is trying to solve the inconvenience factor.
mhm. Well, maybe you could just rent out your basement.
Sure. Except I live on a slab, but yeah,
Oh, well,
yeah,
there's that. That's
yeah.
a problem.
There's that. Right.
Okay, so Dana said, I always need Mark's insight on how to politely encourage buyers and sellers who disagree to be more reasonable. Hmm.
Yes, the doctrine of reasonableness, and I think that starts from the minute you meet them, and in every conversation where you just have conversations, just like we're doing now, and you don't dictate to them, and you don't tell them how it's going to be. You involve them as a partner in the overall transaction, and when they are your partner, then everybody has an equal say and an equal stake in what happens. So that's a way to potentially make them more reasonable.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. See, I told you they woke up. So, all right, we have a question that says, help me understand the crystal ball that investors are looking at. They buy over list, spend money on updates, and still expect to make a profit. It doesn't seem to be realistic.
All right. Well, I'll tell you a story that somebody schooled me on yesterday. That I had an idea about how things were, and then they quickly said, "You don't have the whole picture." So, I, a property sold that I knew about, and when it sold to Zillow bought it, and then Zillow sold it, and only sold it for about $5,000 or $7,000. This was before, literally right before they stopped doing that at all. And they sold it for only like $5,000 or $7,000 more than they paid for it. And I said, well, gosh, they couldn't have even covered what they did to the property. And then I was reminded, because I wasn't schooled properly until the schooling yesterday, that all the fees the seller paid to Zillow also contributed to profit. So therefore, although it seemed to be only a $5,000 to $7,000 spread, it was really much more, because as we know, their fees are more than commission
Got
generally.
Interesting. Okay, so let's see. If multiple offers are received and sellers want to have offer deadline by a specific date, do we need to have handwritten permission from the sellers to not accept any other offers? And what about if one great offer comes in after deadline? Do we still present it?
You present all offers at all times. That's Georgia license law. You don't get to withhold them even the day of closing. If you got an offer on a property, you should submit it to the seller. And with that, you've got to make sure, because when it matters, I'm looking at my board over here. I have this written there. It's been written there forever. When it matters a lot. And so you need to have proof that you presented the offer to the seller. And how do you do that? You shoot them an email. Every offer that comes in, you email it to the seller so that you have a written record that you can print out, that you forwarded it to the seller, because the seller doesn't have the same requirement about acknowledging an offer or countering an offer or saying no to an offer. They don't have any of those requirements, but we do have a requirement to send all offers to the seller and present all offers all the time. No exclusions.
All right.
Did I answer the question?
Oh, you did. You did, and you did very well.
Thank you. I'm passionate about that.
Well, it's when it's a license law thing, I think it's kind of important, right?
Yes, we've had at least one. That's the only one that comes to mind. Atlanta Communities Realtor, who was fined by the Georgia Real Estate Commission for not promptly submitting an offer, even though the seller had said, "I don't want to see any more offers." So we were following the seller's instructions, but we were doing it in violation of license law, and they were fined.
Okay.
So it does happen, and that was about 18 months later, after everybody forgot. Yeah.
All right. So how do you handle future listing appointments when you present a seller with a CMA and they aren't happy with the valuation, and another agent from a different brokerage promises they can sell their home for 30% more? This market is so unpredictable.
I think that comes to credibility, and I don't know that you'll get the listing. It depends on the mindset of the seller and how easily swayed they are to snake oil salesmen.
Yeah.
And voodoo and any number of other tricks.
Well, I know just for me, on listing appointments, I'll tell them what the valuation is when I meet them. But when I hear when they're wanting to list the house in this market, let's say they're a month away from listing it, I'm going to say, here's our values now, but we're going to revisit it and look at what the values are before we put it on the market, just to make sure. And that seems to work for me, at least.
Well, I think right, and I think it comes down to how do you know the seller? If you know the seller because you know the seller, then I think it's an easier conversation than if you don't know the seller. If you don't know the seller and you're just one of many who are darkening their doorway trying to list their property, they're going to do whatever they think is in their own best interest. And unfortunately, I don't know of a way to combat that.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay, so let's see. Dana Chambers spoke about this a few weeks ago, trying to encourage us to go out and find properties for sellers and then buyers, like a matchmaker. Okay, so that's going back to that whole matchmaking, and that's something I'm hearing some agents are doing is, door knocking and talking to people to see if they're thinking about selling, and, let them know that you've got a buyer that's ready to move. So, that's one thing I've heard from some of the other agents is just getting out and going and doing the old-fashioned door knocking.
Yeah, and I think buyers may want to. I mean, I don't know. Do you submit offers on properties that aren't listed? Do you try that strategy? I don't really know of a way for buyers, but you have to be beating the bushes to find properties for the buyers. And I know all of you are doing that. And I'm not making. If it sounded like I don't think you're doing that, that's not the case, but you've got to get creative. And we're talking, I know I see on Rocks a lot about vets being squeezed out of property. Then solicit listings, go in the databases, and not everybody at once, not in every same neighborhood, 5,000 Atlanta Communities people soliciting those same properties, but look for VA loans and then submit. Ask those people if they're interested in selling because they're already vets and maybe they'll sell to another vet.
That's a good idea. That is a good idea. Okay. Debbie said investors are not always looking for profit on the house alone. So going back to those investor people in your story. So good information. Are you required to write an offer if you've been told by the LA, the listing agent, your offer? Sorry, it took me a minute. I'm sometimes slow, Mark.
That's okay. It's okay.
If you've been told by the listing agent that your offer will not be competitive at or below list as they have other offers over list.
You do what the buyer instructs you to do. You have an obligation to the buyer. If the buyer is not a client, you could probably tell them no, but why would you do that? They're just going to go to the next person and do it. Write the offers. That's another thing about the only way to educate them, and this is where I wish the Georgia Real Estate Commission, or more importantly, I guess the state of Georgia would enact some kind of law that says that every offer made must be turned down in writing, because it would eliminate the guesswork of buyers agents who submit offers, who then the buyers believe their offers were never presented or any of these other things. And that's another reason why I'm always in favor of writing offers and also rejecting offers at times. And you some of you may know, because you've had these conversations with me, with difficult buyers, you want a written rejection. With difficult agents, you want a written rejection, so that if there's no gray area that the offer was presented and that the seller has said, rejected. So write every offer. You never know. Just because the listing agent thinks they know what they're talking about, or just because the buyer thinks that they can lowball it and all. If you don't like the way what they're doing and they're not listening to you, then maybe you need to fire the buyer instead of not presenting the offer.
Good point.
Complicated.
Okay. We should encourage sellers to get appraisals before listing. What do you think about that?
In some cases, appraisals do help set the tone because they're very clinical. Appraisers don't, anybody know? Well, I know that we have some appraisers, so I'm not going to use that joke. They're kind of like underwriters. They sit in a dark room, cigarette smoke trailing to the thing, underneath the bright light, looking at comps, and they all it is numbers to them, and similarities and differences. But oftentimes that will help a seller see the true picture, because you can always get an appraisal and then not list at what the appraiser suggested. In fact, for whatever reason, in my circle, I get to be the executor of many estates. It's a product of getting older and being someone that somebody trusts, right? So the first thing I do typically after somebody passes away is I get the property appraised. And it doesn't mean that I list them at that price. It just means I want that information so that I have a starting point, or, I can tell the estate, yeah, this is what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not a bad idea.
Not a bad idea. Okay. Sellers did appraisal on a property, came in at listing price, however, no offers. Buyers and selling agents all think it is overpriced. How would you face this with your sellers who refuse to drop their price now because of appraisal?
Depends on how long you want to hang out with them. Do you know them? Are they related to you? Or do you go to church with them? Do your kids go to school together? Do you want to have an enemy? All those are factors as to whether or not. For me, it would be like, well, thanks, enjoyed playing, see you later, I'm taking my toys and going home.
And do your traditional bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yep, see you later. Good luck. Let me know. Happy to help you.
All right, in this market, and you would also say have a good day.
I would say have a good day. Enjoy your day, actually.
Enjoy your day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Enjoy your day.
In this market, if a potential seller wants to list it really high and we have tried to show them value, is it worth listing with agreement to lower after 2 weeks, or is this crazy?
Nobody could hear that, I know, but I don't know. There's a lot of situational things, and this will go back to my other doctrine of not only of reasonableness, but also of common sense. And for those of you who are looking for inventory by trying to figure out being a matchmaker, one of my favorite, all right, so maybe you've heard me say this before, maybe not. everything I learned and my whole demeanor for the most part is from Sheriff Andy Taylor of Mayberry, because I love that show and I've always loved that show and loved how Andy dealt with everything. He used common sense. He was very low key. He was looked up by many, and that's what he did, right? And there's a great episode. My favorite episode of all time is when Barney becomes a real estate agent and he tries to get these people will buy this house if if those people are able to buy this house. And it's the greatest episode ever. If you ever Google it, Barney Fife real estate agent, and you'll see the episode. But it's it's a complicated thing at times, but I try to figure out what the common sense approach is and then talk to people about the common sense approach. Always use common sense when it's uncommon. Yeah.
I used to love watching that show. I haven't watched it in a long time, and I don't remember that episode.
Yeah.
So, but I'm gonna have to go back and look for it. So, okay. So Patty said that she says the market has spoken. Alex said it will sell if it's priced right. So that's good.
Yes, and I agree with that.
And Debbie says Taylor Freeman loves that show too.
There you go.
I love it. Okay, so now we've got a question going back to VA loans, or the VA. It's tough when a VA and another offer are neck to neck, but because there are no amount of days for appraisal contingency and the history of VA appraisals coming back with subject to repairs or a lower value because of it's a high risk loan, how do you advise your seller with knowledge of this history?
All right. So first off, for all of you who may not know, as a veteran, as a Marine and all, that is just simply not true. It may be true in Statesboro, Georgia. It may be true in Vidalia, Georgia. I know I picked two South cities. Let me see if I can think of it. It might be true in, I don't know, Lake Hartwell, Georgia or somewhere, but it ain't true in Metro Atlanta. VA's loans are done by the same people who do conventional and FHA loans, meaning that there is no weirdness. If the property is a piece of crap, it's going to be difficult to get a government loan on it, period. Unless you're doing a rehab loan, an FHA 203K or some other type of rehab loan. Okay. So I'm talking to all you listing agents out there right now. Quit segregating VA loans as if they're not good. If the lender is crappy, the loan isn't good. That's true if it's conventional, FHA, or VA. Okay. Look at the condition of the property. Be the professional. If you're walking around and there are things, VA will ding you, as will FHA, on health, comfort, and safety items. Health, comfort, and safety items. Other things are not a big issue for them, depending on what they are and how run down the property is.
So basically what you're saying is that this is just a bad rap for VA loans.
It is. And one of the things that I think is also important to say is that, and I've said this before, your involvement in a transaction is only as good as the other real estate professional involved in the transaction. So if they have in their mind as a listing agent that VA loans are not good, then they are in turn going to punish VA buyers because that's their mindset.
And Mark, I have to say, given the fact that I've got one that's planning to serve when he gets out of college, that's really sad to think that could be a problem. Y'all earned the right to have that type of loan, and you shouldn't be discriminated against, is the way I'm going to say it, because of that. But I am going to just take a moment because we've got 80 people on the call now and 20 people on Facebook. So for all of you, including you, Mark, that have served our country, thank you. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. Do it again today.
Don't, because we need you here. So you got to stay. Okay. So we had a comment. It says, yes, to a degree. I went on a listing appointment and told them the best, most aggressive number I thought they wanted more and went with another agent who said yes, and they got their number.
It
You know,
happens.
yeah, it does. It happens. And I think, now more than ever, what we're dealing with is emotional buyers. And like somebody else said, exhausted buyers. And they're just do whatever we have to do to get the house. I just want a house. That's what I'm hearing. I just want a house. So, and sometimes there's some regret after the fact when the appraisal comes in. But, to what you said before, this is where you've got to have that conversation around the coffee table about the fact that the appraisal may not come in, and do you have the cash to cover the difference? Because you're going to have to. So, okay, back to VA and FHA again. Is it true no one can do an appraisal gap even if buyer wishes to? Also, did this just take place this year? For VA and FHA, can they not have an appraisal gap?
I'm gonna say, and maybe all of you will not like this answer, but I'm gonna say I don't know, and I don't know whether or not the people that think they know. Which means that I read the other day in a comment from someone that I believe might have the right answer, which is that if the parties agree to it through a special step, that it could be done. Mm-hmm. And what I want to do is try to get somebody, and I don't even know how to do this. So before you start saying, is that going to happen next week, Mark? I would sure love that info. Well, yeah, I would love to tell you yes, but I don't know the answer to that because I don't control all these other people. But I would love to have in writing from VA and from FHA whether you can do it or not. I know what Gar said, and I have high respect for Seth Weisman and the GAR purchase and sale drafters and the GAR forms committee, etc. I interpret that step. I interpret the VA and FHA exhibits differently, which is unless agreed to by the parties. I mean, to me, it says that unless it's contradicted.
Okay.
That's what I'd read, but I'm not. I'm not involved. I don't go to court. I'm not an attorney. I don't know. And we have to go with the best answer we have right now, which is it's not allowed, at least for VA. I'm not sure about FHA.
Okay. Our folks on Facebook are coming in, and Alexis, thank you for your comment. She said, my listing closed last month with fully underwritten VA loan. It was a very expensive home too, in great condition. The buyer came in fully underwritten, which does help if you can get them fully underwritten, and obviously had a great lender. Robin said she's closing a VA Monday. This is great. And then Heather said, what I understand is that it's not that they can't do an appraisal gap. It's just that technically they can back out and still get their earnest money back. They're not bound to it, but you can have it if they agree to it.
And that may be true. I mean, it may be the same. Part of what we're experiencing in the industry right now is the overreaching of trying to force buyers to stay into a contract. And by that, I mean the exhibits, the finance contingency exhibits in and of themselves, as they're written, are pretty good protection. Mm-hmm. And where they falter is that sellers, through advice from real estate professionals, don't want to give someone the opportunity to get their financing in order. And I would say to that, give them X number of days. Start trying to weed out those who have not been to underwriting, those who have not applied for a mortgage and all that, because otherwise you're still taking it, the seller's still taking that offer on a wing and a prayer. Yeah, I got a pre-approval. Whoopie-doo. If the lender didn't ask the right questions, they didn't get the right answers. And if they're an internet lender, what do they care? You're not going to storm into their office and beat the crap out of them.
Agree.
I mean, we look at, we sometimes have tunnel vision over what others are doing, which is a huge problem nationwide as it relates to this industry, as opposed to think about what I just said. Give a buyer 3 days to get their financing, and then if they don't, flush them out.
Mhm. That makes sense.
Talk to the seller about having a buy, but making sure the buyer's approved, not pre-approved. The only thing you're waiting on is the appraisal. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that at all. I do have a funny story for you, though, since you talked about being able to storm into their office. I used to be in a networking group, and I mentioned I commented or gave a testimonial for the lender in the group, which happens to be one of ours. And I said, I love using him because I know I can go right into his office and I've got a nectarine. And one of the guys in the networking group thought I said nectarine, and he brought me a bag of nectarines.
Nectarines. Well, there you go. There you go.
I have a little twang.
Right. Well, that's close.
Okay, so Carl, thank you for your comment, and also thank you for your service. I have never had a problem with a VA loan, so appreciate that. I have had buyers lose out because they have had a VA loan. It's so sad. 100% agree with that. Thank you for your comment. Okay, Tracy said, fair enough. I get it. This particular home would have likely come back with subject to repairs, bad deck and stairs. All right, good to know. Peg, thank you. Spot on, Mark. I guess that means you're doing a good job.
Well, at least for that one realtor. Thank you, Peg.
Kelly said, thank you, Mark. And Jill said, amen, Michelle. Thank you. And then Lisette asked another question and said, can I report an appraiser if when he came out to do the appraisal, he was bashing the county, the area, and stating that he felt it was overpriced and would never live there. He brought the appraisal in $60K below. However, if I'm honest, I do not feel he did anything wrong on his actual written appraisal, but the area and the house is clearly worth more. So can you report an appraiser?
Well, I mean, there is a channel, just like for reporting real estate professionals, there's a channel through the Georgia Real Estate Commission website and Georgia Real Estate Appraisers Board, GREB, I guess is how you pronounce that. But yes, I mean, there are ways to report appraisers. But, you know, yet again, not that I don't want to police our industry, trust me, but you have to weigh it as to just the fact that somebody's in a bad mood, et cetera. But that does bring up an interesting point, which is and I know I've said this again, I've said this many times, if you're not meeting the appraiser at the property, you're losing an opportunity. Whether you're representing the buyer or whether you're representing the seller. Because appraisers are people too.
Yeah.
And they don't know what you know. In spite of all, I mean, they know a tremendous amount, and they know numbers, and they know square footage, and they know all kinds of things, but they may not know what you know. And if you go there and you have a synopsis of how many offers you got, et cetera, that's going to affect how they view the property, the desirability, et cetera, et cetera. If you haven't tried it, try it.
Yeah.
And then come back and tell me, oh, Mark, you were so off. That guy was an ass.
Well,
Maybe so.
I know for me, I don't always meet the appraiser, but I do try to have a conversation with them and actually have a conversation with them. And to your whole point, Mark, I had a property that went under contract for the highest comp in the neighborhood, and he still gave us 25 over. And I almost fell out my chair that we got 25 over the highest comp in the neighborhood. In the property, actually, that property hadn't even closed yet. So you're right. Having a conversation with them, going out and meeting them is a definite smart idea. Okay, we got 12 messages and 15 minutes. So I'm going to scroll through these and see what we got. Okay, VA exhibit trumps all special steps. Is that right?
Special steps trump everything.
Okay, so even if you have a VA exhibit.
Yeah, this is all right. So let's not get into a finger pointing contest. According to the Georgia Association of Realtors, which would back us if we need it, The exceptions to that are FHA and VA, and also lead-based paint exhibits.
Okay.
You cannot special stip them out of the way.
Got it.
Now, in general, special steps trump everything else.
Okay. But if there's something in a VA exhibit, that rules, and it's because of the type of loan.
If we go back and look at what was published earlier this year by GAR, the answer is yes.
Got it. Thank you for the question. Okay, Tracy said, I've done a VA purchase with an appraisal gap, but have a talk with your lender. Okay, so that's good. Good. I think you're right. And like Mark said, make sure you're dealing with a good lender. Okay. Lisette said, I had an appraiser just recently who used comps not at all related and came in 50K under and wouldn't consider any of the comps I presented on appeal. The buyer and seller ended up renegotiating. Oops, I just lost it. Renegotiating to make the deal work. Okay. What do you say to the appraiser when you meet them there? Well, I think the first thing would be hi.
Right. Hey, I know you guys get a bad rap and all this. I'm just trying to make your life easier. Here's the comps I used when I priced the property. We got 17 offers. Here's the synopsis of the offer. See what you can do, and we would appreciate your consideration for the purchase price. Have a great day. By the way, here's a Coke. Here's a Sprite. Here's a banana. Here's an apple. Here's a cheese crackers. Here's whatever, Appraisers are people too. Yeah.
Appraisers are people too. And most of them are really nice.
They are.
So
they chose a job where they're going to be reviewing data all the time. To say that most of them are people, I think that'd be a stretch. They're data people. And you have to understand that, but they need data, and they also, like I said, they're working extremely hard right now. Chasing a market that's escalating, it's much easier to go the other way.
Agree. And going back to our Facebook chat here, thank you everybody for watching on Facebook Live too. Stacy said, I find that appraisers appreciate information and a brief conversation. So I like how you said it. Appraisers are people too. Okay, we got another comment. Thank you, Mark and Michelle. That's so weird to hear our names in the same sentence because my brother's name is Mark.
Makes it easy.
It makes it easy. Okay, so absolutely agree. I always send appraisers a package when listing, and this one that came in 60K under, we were representing the buyer and the seller was a FSBO, and we did meet him. It's not always going to work out. I mean, I've gone and met an appraiser and they looked at me. I'm like, hi, I'm Michelle. And the appraiser went, okay. Well, it's not going to go good when that happens. But to Mark's point, they're data people. So sometimes they're not always going to have the personality that we have in real estate. That's going to be a cold, wet, mashed potato personality. So you just got to roll with it.
Right.
So. Okay, Abigail said, here's $50 in a handshake. Or a $50 handshake. And then she said, just kidding. That's a good one, Abby. Thank you. Okay, I think we've caught up on all of our questions. And Mark, we've got about 12 minutes left. So tell me, since we've got a few minutes left, what would be your parting words to our group of individuals here today?
Well, first off, thank you for watching. As I've said before, I don't pretend to have all the answers. I just want to have more conversations because conversations lead to understanding. So the best thing we can do is to talk about any and all of this because it's so easy, just like our buyers and sellers, to get distracted by so much noise from people who don't understand what the conditions are or even when they're positive and not necessarily negative. They don't understand the bigger picture. They don't understand everything. They're not immersed in the industry. And quite frankly, some of us may not be immersed enough in the industry as we need to be. I've said this for a long time. One of the best things you can do is to learn sales skills. I don't know why that's such a negative word. and such a negative conversation, but it's about how to influence people and how to get your message across. And there's all kinds of positives. And not only does it work in real estate, it also works in other aspects of your life. So I think we're in a situation where we need more conversations. We need more interaction like this. You're not an island to yourself, but when you go to social media to seek the answer, you typically get the people that are agreeing with you out there to respond to you, as opposed to the dissenting voice that might actually provide you some information you need. That's why I always say, reach out to your broker. Contact your broker. Contact the people that are responsible for your behavior based on license law and based on Georgia Real Estate Commission rules and regulations. Those people are going to provide you with advice that they will stand behind. And if they don't have the exact advice, they're going to seek the answer so they can better advise you and keep you out of trouble. There is all kinds of trouble lurking, and fortunately, we don't encounter it too often. I know many of you are frustrated with the market conditions, but what are you doing to make them different? How are you reacting? What if a missionary, and I don't know why this popped into my mind, but that's how my mind works. What if a missionary goes to some place where they don't know anything about Christianity? Are they only there 5 minutes and go back to wherever they came from and say, hey, they didn't want to hear the message? I don't think so.
Agree.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of comments, and Mark, the overwhelming comment is thank you for your time and your knowledge.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I just, like I said, it's all about conversations. You know, we're here to help. We believe that the way Atlantic Communities is run is different than other real estate brokerages, and we appreciate that fact, and also, as I would say, want to double down on that. And we want to provide open conversations. All of you are not employees, you're independent contractors. And as such, as independent contractors, by your very nature, you are independent, which means that I'm probably better leading you to where I would like you to go than telling you how to go there.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree. And I just want to bring this up because I know that this is a hot button for you, and your shirt just says it right there. So I want to make sure, since we've got a few minutes, so but we're getting a lot of comments about just thank you and loved the meeting, both on Facebook and in the chat. So thanks guys for that. We appreciate it. And I just want to say, I know that this is a hot button for you, especially on Rocks. When you ask your questions out there, you always say not everybody's going to give you the right answer. So your shirt says it, broker up, right?
Right.
Call your broker. That's what they're there for.
All right, and thank you, because that's probably a great way to end this and end it today. I know some of you do it for all the right reasons. You don't want to overstep. Sometimes you don't want to be judged by what your question is. Sometimes you don't want to bother your broker because it's after hours, and that's true. Like if you bother me after hours, chances are you don't get it the next day because I get up really early and I go to bed early as a result. But it's okay to reach out to your broker. That's why we're here. I can tell you that some of your cohorts, notice what I use, cohorts, on Rocks are not going to be there when the shit hits the fan. We are.
Agree. All right, so we got one last question, and then I think we're going to have to end it because we've got 6 minutes, and I have to go to Brookhaven for boot camp. So that's why I'm wearing camouflage, in case you wanted to know. Mark, what is the most recent issue you've encountered that is worth sharing the issue and the solution?
Wow.
You encounter issues like every 5 minutes.
No, I mean, I can say for a change that this has been true since before spring break happened. There really haven't been any major issues that I have come to. I really don't have anything to share like that. I mean, I try to do those weekly as they happen, but I really don't have anything that's without a solution. at this point.
Well, that's a good thing then.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I
and
think so.
I just got asked if boot camp is available on Zoom today. It is not. It's in person at the Brookhaven office. So get in your car and come see us. We got plenty of room. It'll be a good class.
And again, thank you everybody who made the commitment. I hope I didn't make too many people mad. If you have a dissenting voice, or even if you don't, feel free to email me at mark@atlantacommunities.net. I'm always happy to learn more than I know right now, and to hear everybody's opinion and to respond accordingly, because we're all in this together. We have an obligation to the real estate public to get it right and to try to do the best job all the time. And that's what our goal is. And we're here to serve others.
Mark, I got to tell you, this has been awesome. I mean, there's tons of comments in the chat just thanking you, and on Facebook too. Our brokers are great and always respond. Yes, they are. I'm going to say that the culture comes from you and Judson and trickles all the way down. So I know we all appreciate what you do, and the fact that you took an hour and a half out of your day to do this was just awesome. Because I know it's hard. You're just getting questions thrown at you, and you handle it with just such calm and grace, and we appreciate you.
Yeah. So if any of you are aspiring politicians, learn to have convictions, because when you do, then you're okay. Like I never said I'm right, but I'm okay with differing opinions, and I'm also okay sharing my opinion. And I think that's what keeps it real. And one of the things that we need more in this world is for people to be standing behind and not wishy-washy on what they have to say.
100% agree. All right, guys, we're just about at the top of the hour, so I don't see any other questions, but thank you for all the thanks. I will say this for those of you that are still online. If you liked this and enjoyed it, I streamed it on Facebook Live. Go put it on Rocks. So go put your comments out there so your friends and neighbors will see the video and maybe take the time to watch it too. Because we're very lucky to get an hour and a half. That's like 30 broker ups on Saturday mornings. We just got right here.
Sure. Yeah, at least.
All right, Mark, thank you. We appreciate you. Appreciate everybody that came, and we'll see you next time.
All right, one last thing, and that is, if you're watching Broker Up and all, make sure you watch to the end, because I believe there are people that didn't see me take a pie in the face from my own hand because they didn't watch the end of the videos, because they only watch a little bit of it. So always watch to the end, because you never know.
You never know what's going to happen.
You never know what's going to happen. Okay.
All right, Mark, have a great rest of your day. Everybody on the call, have a wonderful day. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.